Hello everyone, I'm Grandmaster Damian Lemos here for TheChessWorld.com. Welcome to a new course where we'll be talking about the London system for white. So as we know, the London is quite a popular and flexible system for white. It is played at all levels, from club players all the way up to top grandmasters. So what I feel it's appealing about playing the London system, it's the fact that it is easy to play and white doesn't have to rely on heavy theory. That being said, we've got some great ideas to analyze, and hopefully I'll be able to show those in the course. And without further ado, let's get started. I usually like doing a little intro first, and then we'll analyze every single line. One more thing before we start, as I like saying in my courses, I focus on understanding the ideas behind the lines we study. Don't like memorizing move by move, because there is basically no point in doing so unless we're talking about a Sicilian where we have attacking positions and maybe checkmate in less than 20 moves. This is not going to happen in the London system. We'll get a nice position out of the opening, and hopefully if we know what we're doing, if we follow the ideas, we'll outplay our opponents in the opening. So after d4, black can play d5 or knight f6. Those are, of course, the main moves. And as white, regardless of what black plays, knight f6 or d5, will play bishop f4. As we know, in the London system, we follow a set of moves in the opening that gives us a solid position. e3, c3, knight d2, knight f3. That's what usually happens in the London system. Now, as white, our moves are easy. Black's the one that has to decide how to play. Black could play, let's say he can play d5 here, trying to play Queen's Gambit. We're not going to play c4, that would be a Queen's Gambit. We'll play the London, and now knight f6, e3. Again, our position, our moves are more or less easy to understand. Black, on the other hand, has a lot of ways of playing this. He can play the classical approach, which is e6 followed by bishop d6. He can play c5. He can even play something like g6, trying to play a King's Indian or Grunfeld approach. He can play knight f6 on move 1, and after bishop f4, he can play in a King's Indian fashion with d6. He can also play, let's say, King's Indian fashion, but afterwards he places the pawn on d5, completely different approach. He can play with b6 and c5. So many ways for black to play this. And actually, after knight f6, bishop f4, there is one more line. E6 plus d5. That transposes into the main line. He could also play e6 without playing d5. He can try playing b6 and bishop b7. So again, so many lines to consider. What we'll do in this course is focus on the main setups and on the main ideas as well. So hopefully I'll do a decent work on showing the ideas. I'll do my best. So let's get started. I feel the best line to start analyzing the London system is the King's Indian, because that's what most of our opponents play. At all levels, we see the King's Indian being played a lot, so that's a great opportunity for us to play the London system. So the first game you'll find in the PGN files is Kamsky against Arun Prasad. We're talking about two strong grandmasters, and you'll notice that in that game white starts off with knight f3. Usually there's no big difference. We see bishop f4 played a lot too, especially by world's #1, former world champion Magnus Carlsen. I would say our move order should be bishop f4 here, and the line we want to study now is g6, and we easily transpose after knight f3. We get the King's Indian. So again, not a big deal. In fact, after knight f3, we're likely to get a London system anyway. If he goes e6, we can play bishop f4. If he plays d5, we can still play bishop f4. And if he goes g6, we still get the London system. So again, not a big deal. So you'll find a lot of games where white plays knight f3 on move 2, followed by bishop f4. My guess is that, and I've played this move order as well, the reason why white plays knight f3 is because maybe against other lines, let's say I'm playing white and I'm playing, I don't know, my opponent is black, is a King's Indian player, so I say if he goes g6 I'll play the London, but if he goes e6 I want to play something else, I'll play c4. So maybe it's the flexibility for white after knight f3, that's the only bonus I can see. If you play bishop f4 right away, you're showing your cards on move 2, but that's great because we love the London system and we know it's a good approach for white. Alright, so enough about the move order, let's jump into the action. So knight f3, g6, bishop f4. Now we do have the London system. Black plays bishop g7. So here you'll find a lot of games where white plays e3, and that is actually the main move. e3, castles. Usually white plays h3. This is the first concept to remember. It is good for us to create an escaping square for our bishop in case black plays knight to h5. So it is good to know that h3 is a good move for us. Knight h5 is not a threat at the moment because we can even play bishop e5. But if black had, let's say, here, g6, bishop f4, let's say black is tricky and he plays, alright, bishop g7, e3, he doesn't castle here. Let's say he goes d6 first. Now he has e5 under control, therefore we have to play h3. We have to make sure our bishop has an escaping square on h2, because if we play c3, it is fine, we are not going to lose in the opening. However, black can play knight h5, and we lose the bishop pair here as white. Again, not the end of the world, but we don't have bishop h2, and if we go here, black plays h6, bishop h4, g5. Again, playable line, not the end of the world, but black achieves something here. He gets the bishop pair, he doesn't have to take now, he might take later on, but he's flexible enough and there's no need to allow this, at least not in this position. We'll see some scenarios where we might offer the bishop pair as white. So first concept, h3 is a move that we're likely to play. We have to play it in order to have h2 for our bishop. So that's concept number one. Alright, coming back to the game, bishop g7. As I was saying, e3 is the main move for white. c3 is another move I like, and it is in fact the move I'll recommend. It gives us more flexibility as white, but I wanted to show e3 first because I feel the concept of playing a quick h3 and stopping stuff based on knight h5, that was a concept that we have to know. So now after bishop g7, c3. Fine, after c3, black castles, and now I like h3. Again, this move order is quite specific because we're not playing e3 yet, You're wondering why? Well, e3 is fine. It is another line. Knight h5 is not great for black yet because, first of all, we can consider bishop e5. He doesn't get the bishop there. I mean, he might after f6, but we know f6 is creating a lot of weaknesses on black's king side, so usually knight h5 is a threat when black has d6 in. So if he goes d6 here, we can play h3, and that's it. Our bishop goes back to h2. We get a standard London versus the King's Indian position. A position which, by the way, we'll come across often in this course. So, coming back to the master move order, c3, castles. Here I like h3 first. So, at first glance, it is not obvious why we play this, but now we'll see the idea behind this specific move order. Black plays d6. There's another line and another system, I should say, where black plays with d5. That's a totally different system. We'll analyze that too. But our opponents, the King's Indian players, they're likely to play d6 because they want to play e5 at some point. That's what they're trying to play. So after d6, we play e3, another key move in our system. And the reason I like e3 is because we give black the option of playing c5, and then we have potentially a great endgame for us. That's why I like this move order, because if he goes c5 here, as we're about to see, we get a great endgame for white, in my opinion. That's the only reason why I like this move order with c3 first, h3 second, and e3. If, let's say here, alright, h3, d6, we can also play knight d2. This is totally fine. You'll find several games with this line where black plays c5, we castle, we get our pieces out, and actually the position is quite interesting. We could easily get a position like this too. However, I like playing e3 because I give black the option of playing c5, and that's the move we'll see now. Because after pawn takes, I believe the endgame is excellent for white. And what I love about this line in particular is that black has no counterplay. It's like a slight advantage for white, and black, on the other hand, has to be precise in order to maintain equality. So, I mean, that's the sort of advantage I like getting as white. So, d takes e5, d takes e5, we swap queens off, rook takes, and now the simple knight bd2. Alright, so at first glance, it doesn't look like much for white. We just have an endgame, queenless endgame, and black has a decent development, so what's not to like for black? Well, we're about to find out. What should black play here? Knight c6, that's the main move. Before we see knight c6, let's take a look at knight d5. Knight d5, we can just go back. And now we'll see that sooner or later black is going to have issues protecting that pawn on c5. We might play knight b3 or knight to e4. And as soon as black plays b6, he's creating weaknesses on the queen side, as we are about to find out in the main game. By the way, a4 and a5 is a line we should consider as well to put extra pressure on black's queen side. The other thing I see here is that after bishop h2, e4 targeting black's knight followed by bishop c7 is an option. So let's rewind here just to see what happens after c5. Our opponents, they'll play c5. They may not even know the endgame is dangerous. So that's what I really like about this line. So takes, knight bd2, knight c6, main line for black. Here is where we have some interesting moves as white. If I was playing this as black, I would be struggling to find the best moves over the board. Trust me, this is annoying for black to say the least. Bishop c7. So, doesn't look like a great move for white, but we're attacking black's rook, and black has a decision to make. What is he gonna do? Rook f8, that looks passive. If he goes rook d7, we'll move our bishop back, and that rook is misplaced on d7. So, by just attacking the rook, we're putting black to the test. Let's see what happened in the main game. Black played rook to f8, and here after rook f8, white goes back to h2. Now, there's a difference. If he goes rook d8 now, our bishop is no longer on f4. Our bishop is not exposed, therefore we've won a tempi here as white. We can play bishop b5, we can keep on getting our pieces out, and again, this is not comfortable for black. Something that could happen is, let's say he goes bishop d7, now I can play a4 to support my bishop, and whenever he goes a6, I can move my bishop back, and now c5 is the target. I see stuff like bishop c7 and bishop b6, knight c4, knight b6, so it's easy for black to end up in a positional mess. And I really like the fact with moves like bishop c7 or here bishop b5 plus a4, we give black the chance of creating more and more weaknesses by advancing its pawns. So let's see what happened in the game. Let's go to the practical example. Alright, so rook f8 is what black played. White goes back to h2. Now, in the game, black plays b6. Fair enough. He wants to play bishop b7, bishop b5. Black plays bishop b7, and white castles. So, we could consider something like king e2. I believe since we don't have queens on board, we can play king e2, we can consider playing it with our king in the center. It should be fine. However, since our bishop is on b5, he might play a6 and b5. He might have some tricks on this diagonal later on, so it feels like activating our rook is better for white, better than playing king e2. And again, black has some issues, because that bishop on g7 is not, I mean, it is okay, but it is under control. That's what I was trying to say. Our pawn on c3 is ideal. Bishop b7 is fine. Again, it is passive at the moment. It feels like it's easier for us to improve on the d file. For black, on the other hand, it's not that easy, because as soon as he plays rook d8, we might consider stuff like bishop c7. We got that bishop on b5, which is quite annoying. On top of that, if black plays a6, that could backfire, because whenever he touches queenside pawn, that creates weaknesses in the long run. So it's a quiet position where black has to be careful. I don't want to say white's winning or anything like that, but it is fair to say black has to be careful not to end up in a strategic, in a bad situation from a positional point of view. So after white castles, black plays rook f d8. Here, white plays rook f d1. Again, we just keep on playing natural moves. Black plays knight to e8, which looks interesting because now knight d6 on the table. It also stops bishop c7, so it doesn't look like a mistake at all. Apparently, according to the engines, knight a5 was better. But even here, I like our chances after knight c4. Now we put an eye on f7, we've got knight e5. Not easy to play for white, for black, sorry, if e6, still knight e5. Little by little we improve our position and we can tell our pieces are just better. You can check this with an engine, you'll realize we got a stable advantage. And if he takes, well, we're more than happy to play with the bishop pair. Believe it or not, this is already plus 1.7 for white, so we'll take that as a win in the opening. So yeah, after rook f3-1, black played knight to e8. Again, I don't blame black for playing knight e8 here, but now we see where the issues start coming in for black. Knight c4, now it's not easy for black to play a6, because b6 is hanging at the end. Black plays f6. Can black trade rooks off and rook d8? Oh, no. Rook takes, after rook d8, we just win a piece. Yeah, knight e8 is hanging. But even if that knight wasn't hanging, I'm sure bishop b8 is quite annoying too. And most of black pawns are falling one by one. So, again, we see black has to be super careful not to lose on the spot. Knight e8, okay, knight c4, black plays f6, fair enough. Knight fd2. I really like how white repositions its minor pieces towards the queen side, because now we'll place the knight on b3, the other knight is hitting that pawn on b6, and after that we'll play a4 and a5, destroying black's queen side, and that's actually what happened in the game. Black played rook d7. Now, according to the engine, knight e4 is crushing for white. White played knight b3, which is pretty good too. Rook to d8, takes, and white plays a4. Again, no reaction for black whenever he plays a6. b6 is hanging, so he cannot do that. We don't even have to play bishop takes here, we can just take on b6. Yeah, total disaster for black, who has no reaction here. He's got nothing to do against a5, and after a5, b6 is hanging, so it's c5. The whole position collapses for black, so you can see that black is already lost here. If you look at this game, if we have a quick look at this game, we are not even able to tell where black went wrong, because black played natural moves, but the truth is, his position is not easy to play, especially on the queen side. He's got some weaknesses. We see that bishop on h2 being quite annoying from the distance. We've got a lot of potential, and actually, as this model game shows, black has to be extremely careful. So this is just a heads up. This is just one of the things I like about this move order. I felt this game was a good intro to the London system against the King's Indian, because it is one of the ideas. We'll see a lot of ideas. It is one of the ideas for white. And what else before we finish this chapter? Bishop g7. Again, you'll find a lot of games where white plays e3 and h3. That's the other version of the London system for white. I like c3, and after castles or even d6, I like h3. I really love this specific move order for white, because again, we offer him the chance to go for an endgame after c5, and as we saw, we have pretty good chances as white. And if black plays something else, let's say he goes b6, bishop b7, we'll also see how to play against this, but I'm sure you'll have, in a lot of games, you'll have the opportunity to play d takes c5 and play that queenless endgame where you have, in my opinion, a solid advantage for white. The last line we'll mention before we finish this chapter is that after c5, takes, queen takes, rook takes, knight bd2. Alright, so knight c6, bishop c7. We have to analyze rook d7, and we'll take a look at rook d7 in the next chapter. And of course, we'll keep on adding new lines to our repertoire. So hopefully you enjoyed this intro, hopefully you could learn something, and of course I want to see you guys in the next one. Thank you.